Number 10. Paige Vanzant fights in the UFC Women's Strawweight division. She is 22 years old and has 4 wins and 2 losses in the UFC. She last lost to Michelle Waterson by submission via rear naked choke in the first round. At UFC on Fox 22, she is still very young in her UFC career and I believe she needs time to develop her skills. I believe if she puts together a couple of wins, she will become a serious contender in the UFC Strawweight division. Number 9. Sergio Pettis fights in the UFC Flyweight division. He is 23 years old and has 6 wins and 2 losses in the UFC. He last defeated John Moraga by a unanimous decision at UFC Fight Night 103. He is a young flyweight prospect and I believe he will become a serious contender in the UFC Flyweight division in 2017. Number 8. Namajunas fights in the UFC Women's Strawweight division. She is 24 years old and has 3 wins and 2 losses in the UFC. She last lost to Karolina Kowalkiewicz by a split decision at UFC 201. She is one of the best strawweights in the UFC and I believe she will become a serious contender in the UFC Strawweight division in 2017. Number 7. Thomas Almeida fights in the UFC Bantamweight division. He is 25 years old and has 5 wins and 1 loss in the UFC. He last defeated Albert Morales by TKO in the second round at UFC Fight Night 100. He is a young bantamweight who possesses one of the most vicious striking in the division. He is a young prospect who has a lot of potential to do big things in 2017. Number 6. Nikita Carillo fights in the UFC Light Heavyweight division. He is 24 years old and has 6 wins and 3 losses in the UFC. He last lost to Misha Sakunov by submission via guillotine choke in the first round at UFC 206. He is so young in his UFC career and has the potential to do big things in the UFC Light Heavyweight division. I believe with a couple more wins, he will become a serious contender in the division. Number 5. Do Hoi Choi fights in the UFC Featherweight division. He is 25 years old and has 3 wins and 1 loss in the UFC. He last lost to Cub Swanson by a unanimous decision at UFC 206. He is a very exciting fighter to watch and I believe he will bounce back from his loss and will dominate in 2017. Number 4. Yair Rodriguez fights in the UFC Featherweight division. He is 24 years old and has 6 wins and no losses in the UFC. He last defeated BJ Penn by TKO in the second round at UFC Fight Night 103. He has looked spectacular ever since he made his UFC debut and I believe he is 1 or 2 wins away from challenging for the UFC Featherweight title in 2017. Number 3. Kelvin Gastelum fights in the UFC Middleweight division. He is 25 years old and has 8 wins and 2 losses in the UFC. He last defeated Tim Kennedy by TKO in the third round at UFC 206. He is next scheduled to face Vitor Belfort in the main event at UFC Fight Night 106. If he is able to defeat Vitor Belfort, I believe he will be a couple of wins away from potentially challenging for the UFC Middleweight title. Number 2. Max Holloway is the current interim UFC Featherweight champion. He is 25 years old and has 13 wins and 3 losses in the UFC. He last defeated Anthony Pettis by TKO in the third round at UFC 206. He has been on a dominant run, defeating all of the top featherweights in the division. He will likely face the current UFC Featherweight champion Jose Aldo in a title unification bout in 2017. Who do you guys think will win this fight? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Number 1. Kody Garen is the current UFC Bantamweight champion. He is 25 years old and has 6 wins and no losses in the UFC. He last defeated the UFC Bantamweight champion at that time, Dominic Cruz, by a unanimous decision to become the new champion at UFC 207. What he has done in a short amount of time is truly amazing. I believe we still have a lot more to see from the young champion. He will face former UFC Bantamweight champion TJ Dillashaw later in 2017. Who do you guys think will win this fight? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you.